On August 14, 1971, a Stanford psychology professor put an ad in the local paper. Male college students needed for a study of prison life, $15 a day. 70 people applied. He picked 24. Healthy. No criminal record. No psychological issues. Normal, well-adjusted young men in every measurable way you could test for. Within 6 days, the experiment had to be shut down. Not because it failed, because it worked too well. This is the Stanford Prison Experiment, and it's still one of the most disturbing studies ever run on the human mind. The man behind it was Philip Zimbardo. He wasn't interested in bad people doing bad things. Anyone can explain cruelty by pointing at a cruel person. He wanted something harder to explain away. What happens when good people are placed inside a bad situation? So he built a fake prison in the basement of Stanford's psychology building. Cells made from converted offices, doors swapped for steel bars, a mainline room for meals and counts, even a tiny solitary confinement closet he called the hole, barely big enough to stand in. Then he split his 24 subjects with a coin flip. Half became guards, half became prisoners. Nobody was chosen for being aggressive or submissive, dominant or passive. The split was random. Pure chance decided who would hold the power and who would lose it. That randomness mattered. It meant whatever happened next couldn't be blamed on the kind of person each volunteer already was. The prisoners were arrested for real. Actual Palo Alto police showed up at their homes, unannounced, sirens on, neighbors watching, fingerprinted at a real station, blindfolded, driven to the fake prison, stripped naked, sprayed with delousing powder, given a smock with a number instead of a name. No belongings, no clothes of their own. From the very first minute, the goal was to strip away their identity and replace it with nothing but a number. The guards got uniforms, billy clubs, and mirrored sunglasses so no one could see their eyes. And one instruction from Zimbardo: keep order. That was it. No training, no rules about what they couldn't do. Just power, a badge, and total silence about where the limits were supposed to be. By day 2, the prisoners rebelled. They barricaded their cell doors with their beds and tore off their numbered smocks. The guards panicked, called in reinforcements from the off-duty shift, then escalated hard. They sprayed fire extinguishers through the bars to force prisoners back, stripped the ringleaders naked, took away their beds entirely, threw the loudest one into solitary. The rebellion was crushed within hours, and something shifted in the guards after that. They had won, and winning changed them. What followed wasn't an experiment anymore. It was a transformation. Guards started inventing punishments nobody asked them to invent. Prisoners forced to do jumping jacks for no reason at all. Forced to clean toilets with their bare hands. Woken up at 2 a.m. for head counts that served no purpose except exhaustion. One guard, later nicknamed John Wayne for his drawl, became almost theatrically cruel, and he wasn't an outlier for long. The other guards watched him get away with it and followed his lead within days. Cruelty, once one person demonstrated it was permitted, spread like a rule nobody had to write down. The prisoners broke faster than anyone expected. Just 36 hours in, prisoner 8612 was screaming, crying, completely unraveling in front of the cameras. "I'm burning up inside," he shouted over and over. He had to be released. Real psychologists were watching this happen in real time. Real graduate students were taking notes. Nobody stopped it. Because by then, everyone inside that basement, guards, prisoners, even the researchers, had stopped seeing it as a study and started living inside it. Zimbardo himself had taken on a role too. Prison superintendent. He later admitted he stopped thinking like a scientist somewhere around day 3. When a parole board was set up to hear the prisoners' pleas, he personally ran it. He worried about prison security, not data integrity. Security. The man who designed the experiment had been quietly absorbed into it. By day 5, the parade of breakdowns kept coming. Prisoner 819 became hysterical after being mocked by the other inmates over the prison loudspeaker. A staff psychologist tried to calm him down, offered him food, told him he could leave. And in that exact conversation, the kid said something that should have ended the study right there. He said he wanted to go back inside and prove he wasn't a bad prisoner, a college student, volunteering for $15 a day, begging to return to a fake prison that was actively destroying him. It took an outsider to finally see the whole thing for what it was. Christina Maslach, a graduate student and Zimbardo's girlfriend at the time, came in to observe on day 5, with no history inside the experiment clouding her view. She watched the guards march a line of prisoners to the bathroom, paper bags over their heads, chained together at the ankles like something out of a different century. And she said the only sane thing anyone had said all week: "This is awful, and you're the one responsible." Zimbardo ended the experiment the next day. Day 6. It had been scheduled to run for 2 full weeks. For decades afterward, this study was treated as proof of something enormous about human nature. That ordinary people, given a uniform and unchecked power, will become monsters almost on instinct. That situations, not personalities, decide how cruel a person becomes. It became one of the most cited studies in all of psychology. It's in nearly every introductory textbook. It's referenced in courtrooms, in military ethics training, and in explanations for real atrocities like Abu Ghraib decades later. But here's the part most retellings leave out entirely. Starting in 2018, researchers got access to the original audio archives, recordings Zimbardo himself had quietly kept for nearly 50 years. And what they found complicates almost everything the textbooks teach. The guards weren't simply transformed by the situation, helplessly. Zimbardo had coached them on tape. In a recorded briefing before the study even began, he told the guards to create a sense of powerlessness in the prisoners. He suggested some of the very tactics they later spontaneously used days later. John Wayne, the most brutal guard of all, later said in interviews that he was performing, he'd modeled his entire character on a movie villain. He said he was testing how far he could push before someone, anyone, stopped him. Nobody ever did. And prisoner 8612's breakdown, the one moment that seemed to prove psychological collapse under pure pressure, turned out to be partly staged, too. He later admitted he faked it because he was bored, wanted out, and didn't think simply asking to quit would actually be allowed. So was the whole thing fake? Not exactly. That's the uncomfortable middle ground nobody likes to sit in. The guards weren't handed a script line by line, but they weren't a blank slate either. They knew, in general terms, what kind of behavior the men running the study wanted to see, and some of them gave it to them, eagerly. Demand characteristics, psychologists call it. People shape their behavior to match what they believe is expected of them, even when nobody ever told them outright. Which means the real finding might not be ordinary people turn cruel the instant you give them power. It might be something almost stranger. People will go disturbingly far to fulfill a role they think they're supposed to play, even when nobody is technically forcing them to play it. That doesn't actually make the result less unsettling. If anything, it just relocates the horror somewhere worse. It's not that a uniform flips some hidden switch buried in the brain. It's that human beings are extraordinarily sensitive to expectation. Tell someone, even subtly, even without a single explicit order, what kind of person a situation wants them to be, and a disturbing number of them will become it. Not because they're forced to, because some part of them wants to fit the part they've been handed. You can see the same mechanism almost everywhere once you know to look for it. Soldiers performing brutality for commanding officers who never explicitly ordered a single act of it. Employees quietly cutting corners because they sense, without ever being told directly, what leadership actually rewards behind closed doors. Online mobs escalating because everyone around them is already escalating, and stepping back would mean breaking character in front of the crowd. The Stanford Prison Experiment was never really about prisons at all. Zimbardo built a tiny stage in a basement, handed out 2 roles, and watched ordinary college students, chosen specifically for being normal, stable, healthy, slide into those roles anyway, within days. Not because the basement turned them into different people, but because some part of all of us is always quietly asking the room, what am I supposed to be right now? And too often, the answer we give ourselves turns out worse than anything anyone actually asked for in the first place.